I paid a bunch of money up front, sometimes thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, and really none of them made up for it. For me, that was not a silver bullet, and I spent so much money on it. And it was like this period in the business where I was spending so much more than I was making. And so we had years that we lost money.
Hey, Brian, welcome to the Passion Product Podcast. It's good to have you here. I'm excited to dive into your story. You have a special story here. It's a bit different than our usual Amazon stories. So I'm excited to kind of dive into it. Why don't you give us a little background about yourself and what you do, and how did you get into this Amazon business and entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cam. I think it is different. So, what we do, we make board games. We make card games and board games and dice games. And my design partner and I have been doing that for over 10 years. And we'll start with a Kickstarter campaign and get awareness. So that's a lot of our marketing goes into that Kickstarter campaign. Whereas, a lot of folks that I think you talk to, it's other types of marketing, and a lot of it is spending money on it. But with Kickstarter, if people aren't familiar with it, they might be, but you put an idea out there, and it could be for an album, book, for us, it's a game. And you see if people are interested in it, and you get people to pay a little bit of money for it, maybe like $20 for one of our small games. And if they believe in it, they'll pay that. And then once we get a bunch of money up front, a bunch of people who do that, then we can manufacture it and we can ship it out to them all over the world. And then they get a copy of the game. So, they pay less than they would after it comes out if they do believe in this idea. And they maybe even help us create it, maybe name things in it, help us make a few changes along the way, and tell us what they want this to be, at least putting the finishing touches on it. And then we put it out there. We will put it into distribution and sell it at, retail stores, but also on Amazon. And so our sales, and then the marketing we put in, we don't do a lot of marketing outside of our Kickstarter campaigns. We just have people play the game, and maybe we ship the game out to 500 people, and they play it with their friends, and then they want to buy it. And the easiest place for them to buy it is on Amazon. So they'll go on their phones after they're done playing, like, I want to buy this game, and then they'll go buy it. And so that's kind of our model: Kickstarter campaign, and put it on Amazon, and have some direct sales too on our website. And that's it. So yeah, it's a little bit different. And I'll leave it at that.
That's a pretty cool business model that you have. So we do talk a lot about Kickstarter. We are familiar with it on our platform, and we do encourage a lot of new sellers to actually take advantage of Kickstarter to fund their business idea. But what's unique here, and what I wanted to ask you, is that you guys are developing different products under the same umbrella on Kickstarter, which is pretty unique. I've never heard of that business model, and that's a pretty cool model that you're doing. Tell me a little bit more about like your experience with Kickstarter, and how do you go about, so you mentioned that you guys ship the games to people to play with, and then do they end up supporting the Kickstarter campaigns, or do they help you with the promotions on Kickstarter, or how does it work exactly?
Yeah. So we've had 13 successful Kickstarter campaigns, over the last 10 years or so. We've had a few that also didn't fail, or that failed, but then we usually relaunched. All but one we've relaunched, and it was successful. But what we'll do is we'll send out to some influencers early on, and it depends on the game. It depends on the size of the game too, how many we can afford to do that with. But like, we'll send it to maybe 25 different influencers in the board game community, and they'll play it, and then they'll share it on their podcast or their YouTube channel. And if they like it, then I think a lot of their community will get on board for our Kickstarter campaign. So that's where some of that goes. But also, we'll go to conventions and play it with people. We have a lot of groups that we'll play with too, just in person, over the 2 years or so leading up to a Kickstarter campaign. So that is, those are really the hardcore fans that we can get, the people that we've interacted with directly, or that are just big fans of, some of the influencers we work with. And then outside of that, we do advertising too. So we'll do, Facebook ads, or, maybe Google ads, and to get people to beyond just those people that we've maybe interacted with, or like the smaller community. But hopefully they've heard of it by now, whether it's through different groups like a Facebook group or Discord server or something where it's been talked about. We just try to get the word out in as many places as we can leading up to it. And then also maybe digital implementations of our games too, that we'll do sometimes. So all of these things come together, create this awareness for a product. And it's all about those first 2 days on Kickstarter. You want them to be as big as possible. And then for the rest of your campaign, it's just hopefully it's successful enough that other people will just jump on and say, this is going to fund. This has already funded. A lot of people are backing it. So I don't need to know that much about it. I'll jump on too.
I love that. And before we dive in, I want to ask you a little bit about the type of games and the creation process and all of that. But I wanted to, since we're on the topic of Kickstarter, and it sounds like you are a serial Kickstarter and you have a lot of experience in it, what are some tips that you can give us to someone new who's never done a Kickstarter campaign, to kind of give them some steps to follow, who maybe don't have access to influencers, or they're not so so good with social media? What are some tips and tricks that someone new could tap into to do a Kickstarter campaign that maybe will generate some money?
Yeah. I would say the most important thing is, it's tough because like the barrier to entry and like the bar keeps getting raised on Kickstarter. It has, in the last 15 years since it's been around. It gets harder and harder. People expect more. They expect a really high, high quality video that you have for your game. They, animated GIFs that clearly show what's going on, a finished product, all the illustrations and graphic design done for the game so that it can be, put out on, a very nice campaign page, a really good looking campaign page that's like professionally done. In order to be a mega campaign, one that funds for, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you really need to do that work up front. And you got to invest a lot of money up front in it too, and a lot of time in building that community that I talked about. So in order to have a mega campaign, like a first timer probably won't be able to do it unless they do all of those things, unless they do spend all of that time and all that money and they learn about how to do it. Like they're really well prepared. So you could do that. And there are people who have done that and have been successful, but I think that doesn't apply to most people. And so what I would recommend for most people is to start really, really small. And like our first campaign was for like a 54 card card game. So, you can find a manufacturer that will put, that's like how many cards are in a standard deck of cards. And so you can find many manufacturers that are set up really well to be able to make that and put it in a little tuck box. So they can make that at a pretty small price. So now, you might be able to manufacture it even at a very small print run quantity of say like 200 copies. And you can maybe even still do that for like $1 or $2 per copy. And if you can sell that game, then if you can make a game that is just involves like 52, 54 cards, then put it in that box. You can still have a nice looking box and spend, keep your production quality really low. Now, $1, like we can say $1 a game and 200 copies. So now it's like $200 manufacturing. Yeah, you're gonna have to get some illustrations and some graphic design probably too, but you can go all in for $1,000 for your product and easily and have that ready to go. And then you're not going to get many backers for that type of game probably, but that's okay. Like it's to learn how it all works, because there's so many lessons you'll learn about creating a campaign page, doing that manufacturing, shipping it all over the world, VAT and tariffs and how those work. And you'll make a whole bunch of mistakes, but you'll do it on a really small scale. And that's what's important. So that's what I want to encourage. Find the smallest product, even if it's not a game, whatever it is, the smallest product you can think of. Enamel pins, put some enamel pins out there, pretty easy to do that. And then just learn the process.
Nice. Yeah, that's really good. Now, what made you get into this game business, and what inspired you to create your product?
Yeah, my growing up, my buddy Clayton and I, so he's my design partner here. We would play games together, play video games and board games and card games together. And so we have a love of games, and we would create our own games. We were always game makers. And we started making games for Xbox or PC or mobile apps, mobile games, and we did that. But then we would make it and put it out there, and then a new version of a phone would come out, a new video card would come out, things with different resolutions, so that aspect ratios. We would have to continue to go back to games we made in the past and then have to update them. And it wasn't, that's not what we loved. We loved making the game, doing the game design. That's what we wanted to do. And so it wasn't really letting us do that. And so at some point we transitioned to, and that was about 10 years ago, we transitioned to making physical games, board games and card games, so that we can make those, manufacture a couple thousand units, or more or less, depending on how it does. And then we're done and we can move on to the next game. And if we want to go back to that game and make an expansion for it, we can, but we're not kind of stuck and feeling like we have to support our customers, by doing this work that we don't really enjoy doing. So that's kind of how it started.
Interesting. So you'll do a single run and you'll sell it, and once you run out, you're done. You move on to the next thing.
Sometimes, yeah, because the board game market is so saturated. It's very easy, especially these days, to make a board game. You can do it. There's a print-on-demand platform called the Game Crafter, which is where we make a lot of our prototypes. And so if someone is interested in making games, go to the Game Crafter. Like, they make it very easy for you to make a game, and you can print a copy or 5 or 10, or if you want to do 1,000, go ahead and do that through the Game Crafter. But the economies of scale aren't as good as a traditional manufacturer, but still use a company like that to get started. And so it's just so easy to do that now that anyone can do it. Anyone can do it as a hobby business, and not worry about making money doing it. And so they can keep their price really low. And it's just there's a lot of hobbyists in this industry, and it's really hard to compete, especially on things like price. And then also to get yourself known when there are, there's multiple game Kickstarter projects launched every day, and multiple games coming out every single day that are, that you're competing with. So it's really hard to get yourself known out there. So there's just a lot of things that make this like, don't do this if you want to make a lot of money, because it's really hard to make money in this industry. But it is, it's still, there are ways to do it. And, we are profitable doing this. But I still have a day job. And, it's something that it's really hard to make enough where you can just quit and go all in.
So yeah, so this is something like a hobby or a side hustle that you guys do because you're passionate about it and you find it fun to do.
Exactly. Yeah. But, the more we do it, the more lessons we learn, the better we get at it, and the more we make. And, so we do, it still is profitable. And I think, at some point, we could quit and just do this full time and take that risk. But it's kind of nice to continue to build this business, learn more about Amazon, learn more about Kickstarter, get better at these things, and then just kind of build it over time. So it's a good way to do it without so much risk.
Yeah. So what is your brand name, and how did you guys come up with it?
Yeah, we used to be called Overworld Games, and we had a pixel art logo, and it kind of came from our days making video games. But people thought we were a video game company, and we don't do that anymore. And so we rebranded about maybe 5 years ago or so to Pull the Pin Games. And the games that we make are very simple. Usually they're, pretty easy to learn. But we want to make sure there's at least one moment in there that's just like a really big, like a big reveal moment, or an emotional moment, or an explosive moment. And so it's kind of like pulling the pin and a grenade exploding. So that's kind of part of where we try to make our games have those explosive moments in them, which is different than some games. Some board games are just very kind of dull, and you're pushing cubes around, and it's all about kind of strategy and thinking quietly to yourself. And our games are much more social, kind of party type games, but still with some strategy. But yeah, we try to have those explosive moments, and then now we've also created our packaging of our games so that each of our games, there's a pin, like a grenade pin on the side of them, and you pull it open, you slide it open, and it's a nice magnetic box. And so we have this, like, when you open all of our games, you're pulling a pin as well. And then the inside of the box is like a grenade, kind of image of it exploding, kind of. So you're understanding that this is a pull the pin game as you're opening it. So it kind of reinforces that brand imagery each time you open the game.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I feel like there's more, especially after the pandemic, there's been more demand on just in-house games where people can gather and play games together. Have you seen an influx or a surplus in demand on games after the pandemic? Is this true?
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, really, over the last 8 years or so, the board game industry has grown and grown. So it was before the pandemic that it was growing significantly every single year, and it's becoming more mainstream too. You're seeing, board games in movies and TV shows, also much more than you did 10 years ago. So it's becoming, just more part of, I think, mainstream culture, and becoming. The pandemic only helped that, and kind of, increased how quickly that was happening. And so we're seeing, I think, a little bit of it leveling off now that the pandemic is over, but it's still a very strong industry.
And how do you guys come up with the game? Is that something where, is there like a creative process where you guys sit down together and try to come up with a new game system, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's different. There's this big debate in board game design between whether you start with the mechanics of the game or you start with the theme of the game, and everyone will kind of push for one or the other. But we go more towards the theme. So we think of a interesting moment, and especially we want to bring out emotion in our games, because that is something that you don't get with a lot of games. So a lot of times you'll have like secrets. I have a secret and I'm taking actions in the game based on my secret or secrets, and I'm going to do better if I can maybe have a secret objective, or I have a role that has a different win condition than someone else. So I make these moves, and when you have those secrets and you're playing the game like that, it can bring out that emotion, because you might have to lie, or you might have to do things that people, are going to hurt someone else's game because they have a different secret role. And so a lot of our games kind of are around that. So we usually start with a situation like that. So example would be the Salem witch trials. We made a game around that. You have people who are accusing people of being a witch, and they are not a witch, but how do you prove that you're not? And so you have a secret role where you're a witch or you're not a witch, and there's a whole bunch of actions in the game that you'll play it differently as a witch or as a Puritan as in that game. So we thought that would be a really interesting situation that would bring out that emotion, and so we created a game around that. Or our most popular game, Good Cop, Bad Cop, we created that from a situation in a movie where you have good guys and bad guys, and they're pointing guns at each other, and you don't know if they're a double agent or if they're really saying that, they're saying they're a good guy, but are they really? And you don't know, and you have to pull the trigger or not pull the trigger. And that's what that just like that type of a moment in a TV show or movie, we tried to bring that alive in Good Cop, Bad Cop. So that's the type of thing that usually, starts.
I love that. Do you guys do any software like market research before you come up with a theme or a game? Like when we look for products to sell on Amazon, we usually do some market research to look for what people are searching for, or a trend that's going on. Do you guys do any kind of market research?
Yeah, so we probably should, with the industry being so saturated. It is, there's just, a game has been made about everything, and there's just, it's important to also be a game player when you're designing games and publishing games and being involved in that community, because you'll learn just by playing other games what works and what doesn't, and you have to decide too what type of a publisher are you. And there are certain ones that are very serious, strategic, long games. And then there are some more like us that are lighter, more party type games. So we're going to have, games that have theme and art that are very approachable, because anybody can play our games. But if you're going for, very, longer strategic type of a game, you'll have, the art shouldn't be fun and kid-like, because that is going to, draw people away from your game. So it's just those types of things. It's not, really specific data. We don't really do a lot of, analytical, data to try to make those decisions.
Nice. That makes sense. I mean, in terms of the product that you're getting yourself into. So I would love to jump into the design and the packaging and the logo. How did you guys find your designer for your packaging and logo, or do you do it yourself?
Yeah. So as doing this as a hobby business, we try to cut costs where we can, and we'll hire people to do our illustrations for the most part. Clayton is pretty very creative, and like for our first game, he started to do that art himself, and the first version was going to have it, but it was successful enough that we could actually hire an artist to create even better versions of the art for that game. So, but from the graphic design side, he has had a lot of those skills already, and then I've kind of learned them over the years. So that's one area where we can save money by doing the graphic design in-house. But it's really that graphic design is one of those skills where sometimes you don't know that you're not very good. You think you are, like, I think that looks pretty good, but then someone who's actually knows what they're talking about, like, that looks terrible. You can't even read that text, and like,
Right.
ugh. So you make sure you kind of know what you're doing there before you do it, and get a lot of people who are not your friends or family to let you know if you really are on the right track with that or not, or if you need to hire someone. But we'll hire definitely illustrators for each of our games, and we'll work through the game so that the game itself is done before we see what type of illustrations fit that game. And then we'll find other games that are similar to it that we think would be good. And then we'll reach out to the artist directly that way. That's been the most common way for us to find our illustrators and graphic design. Like I said, like, that's usually in-house. We've had a few graphic designers in the past help us out when we got some complicated work that we need to do, but that'll usually just be from word of mouth. I know a lot of publishers in the industry, and so we'll share who's done a good job for us and who hasn't, so we can find people that way too.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. And you guys trying to be as cost effective as possible, and we do talk about, because one of the things that we do is we encourage people to start their businesses with as minimum as possible. Save money in the beginning. You're testing your product. Then once you have profits, you can reinvest into the business. So I do love that. And today, I appreciate you filling out the sheet for the startup cost and the sales numbers. And today we're going to be talking about good cop, bad cop, right? So this is the breakdown of good cop, bad cop.
Yep.
And for illustration fees, I see you guys spent $3,000 for this game. Now there's 6 different versions of this game. Is that why it costs so much?
So that's actually really low for most board games, especially on Kickstarter. Kickstarter backers, they really want amazing illustrations. That's one thing that you can set yourself apart from other creators and other Kickstarter campaigns, is having just jaw-dropping illustrations. So oftentimes, like, it's gonna, you could spend tens of thousands on illustrations easily on some games. So that's actually a pretty good price. And what this one is for is, we have the base game. We just came out with a 4th edition of the base game. We've been selling this for a long time, and it still sells really, pretty well for us. And so we have a fourth edition of that, a new expansion, which is the fourth expansion, and then 3 other expansions, which had been out of stock for a while. So this latest Kickstarter campaign allowed us to get money up front to do a manufacturing run of the new edition of the fourth of the base game, and then a new one of the new expansion, and then new versions of each of the previous 3 expansions. So it's all kind of combined. So the sales numbers are actually from the 3rd edition previously. And then, yeah, the 4th edition is coming into Amazon basically as we speak.
Oh, nice. That's amazing.
Yep.
That's a great way. You don't think about, like, when you're launching more products for your brand, you don't think about like, oh, let me do another Kickstarter campaign, but actually you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And this way you get more cash flow into the business. This is really good. Did you have like, did you have to take like the product photos for the Amazon listing yourself also, or do you hire a professional photographer to do it?
I did do it myself. Yeah, and I'm definitely not an expert there. So I think that could be a place where it would be worth investing. There's also influencers, especially on like Instagram, who just do that. You know, you can pay them to take some really nice pictures of your product, and then they will, one, help you sell it by putting it on their, Instagram feed. But then also you get those pictures that you could use for your product shot. So something like that, I think, could be useful. I have reached out to some, influencers for that kind of thing. It's just been too high a price for me to pay to do it that way rather than just doing it myself. But I do think, if I would have just kind of done some more legwork, I could have found, a good option there, a little lower priced option that would give me, pretty much what I'm looking for.
And when you're working on the design and the photography and the packaging, is it just you and your partner, your business partner, or do you have like friends and family? And like you said earlier, I think you mentioned how you get the people involved in the customization of the product. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Who gets involved, basically?
It's pretty much me and Clayton. We do it all, as much as we possibly can. And there's things, video production, we can't do. I mean, I guess I've done, for some of our campaigns, I've done the video, but I shouldn't. I'm not good enough. Like, that takes too much skill to do a really, really good job. So we'll hire out someone to make a video, and we'll hire out someone to do illustrations. But everything else we try to do in-house. But yeah, we will go to our design communities. There's a lot of board game designers out there. There actually is a ton. So especially in like the Los Angeles area where I live, there's a lot of events I can go to where game designers they want to test their new games. So I'm involved in a lot of those, and I'll go there and get feedback from game designers. But then also, so that's one type of feedback you can get, which is good. But the better type of feedback is just from your regular gamers. So I'll go to just game events through like meetup.com or just others I know about, or conventions, board game conventions, to go there and get feedback on anything from actual people who are not game designers. So they'll tell me whether they like the art, whether they are confused by the reference cards in the game, whether they like this component or that component. So I'll ask them in person, but then also on social media, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'll try to involve our community that way too, and voting for things, because that helps them feel like they are involved in the next product that we're creating, and they'll be more interested in backing us if they had a little bit of a say in the player colors that we chose or the box art that we ended up going with.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. You guys are really resourceful when it comes to creating those products, which I love. Let's go into manufacturing the products. I know you mentioned a manufacturer that you use for the samples. I think it's called, you said it's a Game Crafter.
Yep.
Is that also your manufacturer, or do you have your own manufacturer?
No,
after you're done with the samples?
Yeah, no, we just do the samples and send those out to influencers and use those also for those game design sessions that I talked about. But no, when we're ready, when the campaign funds, then we do a much more established a large print run manufacturer in China. So we've worked with quite a few different ones there, and so we've found one that we've used on our last few games that we really like that partnership, and so we'll manufacture there and and do our print run that way.
How did you find your manufacturer?
This one was a reference from another publisher, and it is good to keep close with other publishers, especially kind of at your level. There's many different sizes of publishers, so to keep in touch with them, network with them, because you're all always looking for graphic designers, illustrators, video production, manufacturers, fulfillment partners. You're all kind of trying to figure it out yourself, how to get a little bit of an edge. And so if they're willing to kind of share what's worked for them, or people or manufacturers that they've worked with, then it's better for all of us. Because if my manufacturer, I will happily recommend them to anybody, because the more business they get, the bigger they get, and then the better they can do for me. Lower prices they can give me. They can source more types of components. They can maybe move into 3D models for components. So, so I think everybody wins, if you share that type of knowledge.
Did you talk to multiple manufacturers before you settled with the one that you're working with?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have in the past, and, I've gone through different manufacturers, and when I've had a couple projects that I've worked where they just haven't gone well, and I feel like it was, it's always partly my fault for sure. But if I also think it's partly the manufacturer's fault, then I just won't use them again, and I'll usually give them another, like a second try. But, once it's been a couple, then I need to move on to another one. So it's usually once I find a good partner, then I want to stick with them, because there's just a lot of risk in switching manufacturers. You don't know how miscommunications that could occur. Like the way we make our boxes, since each of our games have that same kind of pull the pin type box, I want to make sure that that's consistent. I want to make sure when we do an expansion to Good Cop, Bad Cop, that the cards are the same, have the same feel, the same finish, the same colors. So that you can put cards from one expansion into a base game. So there's a lot of, once I go to a new manufacturer, I'm always hit with these kind of questions, unknowns, and then potential risks that I like to avoid. So once I find a good partner, whether it's fulfillment or manufacturing or something else, I like to stick with them if I can.
Yeah, and before you place your production order, do you request samples from these manufacturers as well?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yep. But you always got to get many samples. I've definitely been hit with maybe not getting a sample of something and then it didn't go well. And, sometimes I pay for it, sometimes they pay for it. But getting samples is a must. And for most people, I think I'm in a little bit of a unique situation there. You should definitely get many quotes for your manufacturing before you go ahead with it. And even with a partner that I've had for a while for manufacturing, if the price seems high, then I will likely get a couple other quotes from others, even though I probably won't go with them, just to make sure like I'm still at about the same level for my existing partner that I'll stick with. And that can be a way to negotiate too. I'd like to stick with you, but this one is offering me, 50 cents cheaper per unit on this. Can you meet that?
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to negotiate prices. I know you put here, you spent $250 for samples. Were those from the game crafter or were those from the manufacturer?
Those samples are from the manufacturer. I didn't put the game crafter ones in there. I guess I call that more of a marketing expense to create these for influencers. But the manufacturer, those would be the samples of each product from the manufacturer that they'll send me ahead of time. So yeah, it's for this game, like that is the cheapest it'll ever will be for me. These games are pretty much just cards, a little bit of cardboard. But not much. So the sample price is really low. Oftentimes, if I have 3D models in my game, the setup costs can be thousands of dollars easily.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but I just wanted to follow up because I want to know, how much did it cost you to do your Kickstarter campaign? I know you put here $1,300 for the Kickstarter video, and how much was it for the Kickstarter marketing campaign? Including the samples and that. How much did that roughly cost you, and how much did you end up making in the Kickstarter campaign? I don't know if we went over that.
Yeah. So the marketing cost is about it was about $6,000 for this one. And then manufacturing cost was about, I think, let me get the actual number for you. Manufacturing was I know. So all in, it was about just over $10,000 all in for the campaign, and we made, I think it was 14,000 that we made on this one before the fees. So Kickstarter takes 10%, and or Kickstarter, and so all of the fees like Kickstarter and BackerKit, which we use for our pledge manager, and then the payment fees, it ends up being about 10% total that will be taken. So that's about maybe $1,500 that would cost. So all in, we made about just a little, maybe 1,000, 2,000 more than the amount that we paid for manufacturing, which is taken up by things like illustrations. So like right now, we would be about even on it. However, we have 2,500 copies now that we can sell on Amazon, and then all of that profit that we get from that is going to be, it's going to be full profit. So we're about even right now, and then it's just over the next couple of years of selling these through direct sales, through retailers, and really primarily on Amazon. We're going to have, instead of having to take the like manufacturing costs or any of that out of the profit that we might get, as long as any money that we're not paying Amazon just for the Amazon fees is profit for us. So we'll be able to make a lot of money over the next couple of years on just this extra inventory that we have.
Nice. And I want to get into that in a second, but I just want to clarify one thing. You said it cost you a little over $10,000 for manufacturing, and that includes the illustration fees and the software and everything else, right?
Yep.
To run your Kickstarter campaign.
Yep. Marketing, video. Yep.
The marketing and the video and all of it. Where is it? Okay. Now the little over $10,000, that was for 2,100 units, right? And the
2,100 units of the base game, but it's also print runs of the expansions, the 4 expansions. So yeah, offhand, I'm not sure how many I made of those, but I want to say, about 1,000. I would say maybe a little less than 1,000 of each of the expansions.
Of the expansions, meaning the different SKUs or the different models of the same game.
Yeah, it's like a little add-on, to the base game. You play the base game, and then each expansion maybe changes a few rules, adds a few components, and so we have 4 of those that we've created over the last 10 years.
I see.
Every couple of years we'll come out with a new expansion, and that's another reason to go back to Kickstarter to say, hey, everybody, previous backers too, we have this new expansion. Do you want to get this too? And then people who have already backed can get the expansion, and then people who don't have the base game at all can get both the new expansion and then the base game. So we get to keep going back to Kickstarter every time we want to do a print run, which is nice to get those upfront funds, the organic marketing that Kickstarter offers. So it's a great model for that.
So the 1,300 for the video, I'm just making sure that I get this right, because the numbers that are here on the startup cost, it's adding up to, if I add the video here and the marketing, you said is about $6,000. Does that include the video or without the video?
Yeah, there's the manufacturing dollars. So yeah, about 4,600 for that manufacturing.
Okay, and you were able to fund $14,000 out of Kickstarter.
Yep.
And so you spend like $3,700 out of pocket after all of that.
Well, yeah, they take 10%, so that would bring you down to about 12,500 or so. And
I see. So you paid more like $5,000 out of pocket after all the expenses, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I guess that sounds about right.
Okay.
So we've got a little bit, I guess, that we're not quite even yet.
And you got the 2,100 units plus 1,000. Does that include the extra 1,000 of
Oh
the
no, yeah.
add-on
No, so yeah, we've got, about 1,000 or so of each expansion also. So
on top
that's
of this?
on top of that. Yep.
So would that be more accurate to put
Well,
say you
no,
want?
so it's, so actually we have, so yeah, it's about, we'll say 2,000 of the base game and then
Got it.
1,000 of each one. So that would be 6,000 total
I
units.
see.
But then the manufacturing costs, if you want to add those in, are going to be more. I think this was just the base game manufacturing costs. So I have to look at the cost, including the 4 expansions too.
Oh, I see. Well, that's not included in this number, so we can leave that out for now, I
Yep.
think.
Yep.
Let me take this out. Kickstarter marketing put that over there. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna put here minus 14.
And yeah, this was actually the Kickstarter marketing. I did include the video in that, so it'd be more like 4,700 then for that.
Got it. Oh, okay. So yeah, that included the video.
Yep.
Initial. Okay, that makes sense. Got it.
We can call this like ads.
All right. And how did you ship the products to the US? Did you use sea shipping or air shipping?
Yeah, so there's two kind of big shipment processes we have to go through. One is to do like in bulk to Amazon, and then the other one is to ship to each of our backers. So we've used different models for the easy one is for Amazon. Yeah, you got to see ship those because we're talking about, thousands of units that we're doing. So like, a couple pallets worth of games at least that we need to ship back to Amazon. So that, yeah, we go by sea. And so we have a logistics partner that we've used for quite a few years. That's another one where we've kind of changed that over the years, depending on, how good a service we've gotten from them. But yeah, so that'll go through sea freight to ship to each individual backer. That's different. That's we've tried different models of that, and it really depends on how big the campaign is. We may have fulfillment centers in the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, and maybe in like Asia.
Oh,
and then
wow.
so we'll ship some games to each of them, and then they will ship to their local regions.
I see. So you're selling in different marketplaces. That's amazing. And did you get the UPC codes from GS1?
Yeah, originally for most of the last 10 years, we have not. We've used just like buyabarcode.com to get them. And that has been fine, actually. We did have to, at some point, Amazon said they didn't like that. And we had to pay each one, I think it was like $0.25 per unit to put a new sticker on them, their own UPC. But that was when GS1, like I looked into them and they were super expensive. So they were just not worth this thousands and thousands of dollars for barcodes, like to register. And I think it was a yearly fee in the past. So now I do use GS1 because they've greatly reduced that cost. Now it was just a few $100s for a set of, I think, like 6 barcodes that are GS1. So I did use those for that campaign, for this campaign.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
And it didn't look like there were any. Yeah.
Did you face any problems using barcodes from another source?
I didn't really, other than just like the like $0.25 per unit cost that Amazon charged me to relabel everything. That was the only downside. But there were no other conflicts. Even on Amazon, there were no other products using the same barcode. Never ran into that kind of thing. And I would still use something like a buyabarcode.com for my like promotional items or little pack of cards you get on Kickstarter. Basically anything that doesn't go on Amazon, I would actually not use GS1. I would find a cheaper alternative.
I see. Yeah. It's funny how Amazon they kind of discriminate against other sources of barcodes. So it is more affordable to just get them from GS1 when you're selling on Amazon. And obviously you guys have an LLC to separate the business.
Yep.
And did you do that yourself, or did you hire someone to do it for you to file it?
Yeah, the LLC is easy. That I would recommend. Just you can figure that out on your own. Go to it's going to be different for each state, a little bit different for each state in the US anyway. But yeah, you can do that on your own. We've also done trademarks that I would not recommend doing on your own, but we do have trademarks on like Good Cop, Bad Cop, and on Pull the Pin Games, and then our previous company Overworld Games too.
And if you don't mind me asking you, do you remember how much it cost you to file for the LLC? Was it like $90 if you did it yourself?
Yeah, in California, it's very expensive. It's like $800 in California.
That's when you file the taxes, right? That's
yeah, $800 a year basically, and to kind of renew your LLC. I think initially it was not much to just say, hey, this is my LLC. I'd like to register it, but we actually did it in South Dakota. That's where Clayton lives. And that's where I used to live. So we filed initially in South Dakota, and so it was a lot cheaper. It's like, and there it's like $50 a year to renew your licenses. So it changes dramatically by state in the U.S. how much they charge.
Yeah, I know. It's really expensive here in California when you file your taxes. And the trademark, you got 2 trademarks, one for the logo and the other one is or two logos, right? The Good Cop, Bad Cop, and Pull the Pin. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Cool.
And that one, in board games, since it's tough to make money, you really have to be really careful with every dollar. I wouldn't recommend you get a trademark in the board game industry. It has cost. I mean, it initially cost me probably like $3,000 to get it, for each one to get them set up, and then you have to renew them too, which can cost another like $1,500 or so to renew it.
To hire a lawyer to do them initially?
To hire a lawyer, to do it. So, you might be able to find a little bit cheaper, but still, you're talking thousands of dollars for this trademark. And I just don't, unless your product is very, very successful, I just don't think it's worth it. But that's gonna your mileage will vary based on your industry and your product. But for the board games, I just wouldn't recommend it.
We do recommend it initially for people who are selling on Amazon because it gives you access to brand registry, which gives you a lot of benefits with selling on Amazon. Only for that purpose we do benefit. And and there are ways to kind of make it like to get your brand registered. Sorry, my webcam just went out. There are ways to get it like for cheaper if you want to get it for like your brand name or for the image, because you can get the image trademark or the actual word trademark. So there are like ways around it to make it easier to get. I think the image trademarks are a lot easier than the word trademarks, but I do see it. I do see the benefits of it on Amazon because it gives you access to a lot more stuff if you didn't have brand registry.
I can see that.
And so let's talk about launching, because so now we went through all the startup phase and all the fun stuff that all the exciting stuff to making it happen. So in the end, we're looking at the per unit cost. So after all expensive, the cost per unit comes out to $3, which is pretty good. And you guys are selling it for $24.99, so you have good profit margin. And obviously, after the Amazon selling fee, Amazon FBA fee, and other fees. So I'm just going to break it down to the year of 2024. So we have you from January 2024 till now. And if we look at the sales revenue, you have generated $6,000 in sales revenue. And after all costs, you have $3,377 in net profits. And that's pretty good, man. That's amazing. Like, you have a successful product that's selling, making money on Amazon for a side hustle. Like, that is amazing. And that's just this year.
Yeah, and I think, you can, and that's with no marketing dollars putting into it other than the Kickstarter campaign. So it's a little bit hard to kind of judge that because we put marketing into that Kickstarter campaign, but then afterwards we don't do any marketing. And we could, and I've tried, I've definitely played around with it quite a bit with like Amazon marketing. It just hasn't come out to something I'm comfortable with. Part of it is probably I don't know enough, and I'm not as good enough about choosing those right keywords and choosing how much to spend on them. But also, again, that market saturation. There's so many games out there on Amazon. It's not like you're choosing between a dozen different styles of these slippers, or types of slippers or something like that. It's there's I'm sure thousands of games on Amazon that you're trying to compete with. So that's kind of that's tough. But yeah, our main profit driver is really, you know, kind of the combination of Kickstarter campaign, and we've had campaigns that have been, you know, raised, you know, $80,000 on Kickstarter.
Wow.
And then having Amazon is kind of more of a secondary, you know, market of this is where we can sell, and hopefully for a long period of time. We've been selling Good Cop, Bad Cop. Now this product is 10 years old, you know, and still selling, you know,
Amazing.
a copy a day.
Do you guys do any social media ads at all, or any video ads on social media?
Just experimenting, kind of like for a campaign, I'll try them. Like usually each new campaign is an opportunity for me to try, you know, Twitter ads. You know, let me see how those work, see if I can get those to, you know, make sense financially and get a good enough ROI. Or let me try YouTube ads this time. So, you know, I'll do an experiment each time and see if I can get that working. But I mean, Facebook ads is the only thing that we consistently do, I would say. Well, that, and then there's a very popular board game website called Board Game Geek. So we'll also advertise on that, because that is just such a good direct market. And but
Nice.
yeah, those are the main ones.
Have you guys experimented with TikTok Shop?
I get an email from TikTok Shop every day saying I should start up my store, because I did like start to look into it, and I tried to create a video for it, and it just didn't really work out. And I'm not a TikTok user myself, so it's kind of hard for me to know and like invest the time when this is a hobby business, you know, to invest the time in that. I think, you know, if this was something I'd do full time, you know, those are things that I would be able to spend more time doing. I would be able to have a better presence on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and then once you have that, then those you get a better ROI on those ads for those platforms too.
Definitely. And I know we're running out on time right now, and I don't want to keep you any longer. But before we end the podcast, I would like to end it with the 3 top mistakes, or 3 costly mistakes that you made that we can learn from. Can you share some of those?
Yeah. There have been a few, you know, I'd say mostly specific to the board game industry. But I mean, I think it could be applied to others. Like, so we tried to we got a bunch of intellectual property that we bought for games. So we had the Zorro dice game was one. So we paid for the license to use Zorro in the game. We did Total Recall movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. We got the license to that, and we made a game based on that. And we did another popular board game called Euphoria. We got the license to that. Also Valiant Comics. So I thought that was the silver bullet to having a huge Kickstarter campaign, because I've seen many campaigns that have had an IP and they've done very well. So I thought that was it. I paid a bunch of money up front, you know, sometimes thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars for an IP. And really none of them made up for it.
Wow.
So, you know, and that's another one where I kind of don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know how to, you know, activate that fan base of a particular IP. And it's something I can get good at. But for me, that was not a silver bullet. And I spent, so much money on it. And it was like this period in the business where I was spending so much more than I was making. And so we had years that we lost money, and went from like making really good money, and then, IPs, like this is going to help us skyrocket. And then it did not. So that was a big mistake. I won't do that again. I'm not saying it won't work for anyone, but you really got to know what you're doing if you want to put IPs on your product. So that's one. Yeah.
Yeah. And how much do you think that cost you in total?
So there was, I'll just say that the Total Recall game, we never ended up actually making a game. So all in, sunk costs on that was about $40,000.
Wow.
So it's really hard to take for a small business to take a $40,000 hit. And if I would have quit my job back then and just done this full time, that would have killed the business, and it would have put me in a really bad spot, financially. So it was nice that, I didn't take that. I'm glad I didn't take that risk, and it makes me more hesitant to do it now, even though we're making money again. In the last few years, we've been making money again. It's still, I don't want to take that risk until I'm sure that we've got a really good foundation.
Wow.
So yeah, other lessons learned. I guess just a quick one with most recently. So we did not get this new product and these new expansions out before Black Friday this year. And we could have. We had them manufactured in plenty of time to do it. But I first shipped them to a fulfillment center. And it rather than directly from the manufacturer, I shipped them to a fulfillment center to do our Kickstarter fulfillment. And then I tried to ship from that fulfillment center. I wanted to get it out to our backers ahead of time. And so I had plenty of time. And then I tried to ship from the fulfillment center and sea freight that back to Amazon warehouses in the US. And a fulfillment center is really good at shipping out small products to people all over the place, their region, but they are not good. They are not really good at or willing to say this isn't my inventory, because it's not. It's the manufacturer made this. So for like customs, they're not willing to say this is mine. Go ahead and ship it to the US. So what I had to do was it was a mess trying to get this shipped back to the US. So, I mean, it took a couple months delay, and it ended up not getting, they're receiving it into the Amazon, fulfillment centers right now. But we're past Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So it's too late. So, yeah, that was a big mistake. I will not do that again. If you want to ship things on the ocean, you should make sure to do it straight from your manufacturer, because they're willing to do the right paperwork to say that this is my inventory, and you can go ahead and ship it to different countries.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's really good to know. I mean, I haven't talked to anyone who does fulfillment in multiple marketplaces, but I mean, that's good to know that. Now, are these numbers, the ones you shared, are those from the US market only, or are those from multiple fulfillment?
I guess those are from the US market only, but we don't have, we don't get many sales outside of the US market. So we do, I have stores in, I think, Brazil, Canada, and Mexico, but those are the only ones that were kind of an option for me. I would happily sell them anywhere that Amazon will let me, but those are the only ones so far that I've been able to. But yeah, it's not too many sales in those places. However, we do localize. So there's another big source of our revenue is from localization. So we'll have a publisher in China who will translate the game and then sell it in their market. And they actually sell, in other markets, they sell far more copies than we do in the US, so each month, I would say all of our localization partners, which is about a dozen, total, it's about probably 2,000 units per month that they'll sell to, which is, we don't sell 2,000 units a month, anywhere near that. So that's another, we don't get as big a cut of those sales, but it's still a nice source of revenue for us.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And what is one last mistake that cost you money that we can learn from?
Yeah, this one is more of a cost us, more on our brand. So we have a game about cops, good cop, bad cop. And at one of our Kickstarter campaigns, we allowed people to put their you can pay extra, maybe pay a couple $100, and then we'll have our illustrator draw you into the game, because we had I think 24 different cops that we were going to put in the game. So why not base them off of real people and our backers? Because if you buy a game and back a game with your likeness in it, you're going to tell people all about, you're going to play it all the time. You're going to do a lot of selling for us. Plus, if you're willing to, basically front the cost to do the illustration, it's win-win. So we did that, and we thought it was a great idea. And it was okay, but the problem was that it was pretty much all white men who paid for this. So now we have a game just, with no diversity, no gender diversity or racial diversity. And, what can you do? Oh, sorry, I know you paid for this, but we can't put you in there. We have to put them in the game. So we had this expansion out, without that, without thinking about that and planning for that, and at least reserving some illustrations that maybe weren't from backers, to make sure that we can have some more diversity. So that alone wasn't good, and it was a lesson learned as a publisher. But then, with a lot of police violence too, that has been in the news and getting the attention it deserves over the last few years, it made that problem worse, because now we really look bad, too, but because we weren't thinking about that then, and we're
I
trying to
see.
market a game about good cops and bad cops, at a time when it's a really sensitive issue, especially in the U.S. So that was, I guess, a couple of lessons learned, some that are hard to kind of plan for, some you just have to adapt to what happens, and focus on other games if one doesn't seem like it's the right time to market it. But yeah, a couple of little lessons
Interesting.
there, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story and all the lessons and the hard work. Congratulations on your business. And this was really interesting. I really enjoyed talking with you today and hearing about your business and your brand. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Hopefully, some of this maybe will help, some, especially, like a hobby, designer, or hopefully something was useful. But
Yeah,
I
it's
appreciate
definitely
it.
inspiring for sure. I love hearing new stories. So thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to filming and talking with you soon.
Yeah, definitely.